Lorenzo, and I'm here to do these requests for Gladoroth, and I'm about to read this. Do these after you get done with the 30 tag team matches, 27 matches. Mecca versus Buster Rhymes at the Hunts Point Scrapyard. Number 2, Eric Sermon versus Henry Rollins at Club 357. Sean Paul versus Havoc at the Foundation. And number 4, Tag versus Lorian at the Hunts Point Scrapyard After Hours. Prodigy versus House the Seventh Heaven. And 6, Elephant Man versus Crazy Legs at the 125th Street Station. 7, Bubba Sparks versus Bo at the Limit. And number 8, WC versus Elephant Man at the Gauntlet Intense. And number 9, House versus Bone Crusher at the Crow's office. Number 10, Flavor Flav versus Stingray at 7 Heaven, the club at the Disturber the Peace. Henry Rollins versus Crazy Legs at Club 357, High Stakes. And Jacob versus Mecca versus Scarface. No, wait. Jacob and Mecca versus Scarface and Skull at the Red Room. Against Trick and Santos versus Henry Rollins and Warren G. And at the Gauntlet Intense. Number 14, Capone and Baby Chris versus Flavor Flav and Stingray at the Chop Shop. And 15, Sean Paul and Nori versus Ching and Lil Kim at the Limit. Warren G and Shauna versus Shaniqua and Sticky Fingers at the 7 Heaven. And Trick and Mac 10 versus Cruz and Cindy Johnson. And Capone versus Warren G versus Scarface at the versus Warren G and Scarface at the Foundation, you know. Lil Flip versus Comp versus Busta Rhymes and Stapleton Athletics. And Capone versus Crazy Lane versus Ice-T at the Club 357. And Henry Rollins versus Chris versus Dan G versus I'm sorry about that. I would like to do it. Henry Rollins versus Cruz versus Dan G at the energy plant, power plant. Elephant Man versus David Banner versus Tech at the Gauntlet. Bo versus Baby Chris versus Trick, 125th Street Station. Solar versus Warren G versus Ludacris at the Pit. Shaniqua versus Shauna versus Trick at the Huntsville Scrapyard. And Trick versus Zack Zebra versus Warren G at the Huntsville Scrapyard After Hours. Trick versus Redman versus Lauren at the Club 357 High Stakes. Oh wow, I'm gonna read those ones. 27 matches. Mac 10 versus Sean Niqua and Huntsville Scrapyard After Hours. Slick Rick versus I'm sorry about that. Slick Rick versus Bubba Sparks at Quirrell's office. Eric Summer versus Shaniqua at 125th Street Station. Warren G versus Trick at the Red Room. Ice-T versus Starks at Gauntlet Intense. Mac 10 versus Sticky Fingers at the Chop Shop. Bo versus 9 at 7 Heaven. Ghostface Killer versus Stingray at the Foundation. Ludacris versus Jacob at the Gauntlet. And WC versus Elephant Man at the Red Hook Tire Company. And Tag versus Suspect at the Club 357. And Redman and Scarface versus Tech and Scar at the Red Room. Flavor Flav and Family versus Sean Paul and Henry Rollins at the Hunts Point Scrapyard. Knife and Exhibit versus Flip and Bone Crusher at the Gauntlet. And Warren G and Sticky Fingers versus Exhibit and Shaniqua. Warren G and Sticky Fingers versus Exhibit and Shaniqua at 7 Heaven. Nori and Baby Chris versus Ludacris and Conrad Electra at the Pit. Stingray and Suspect versus Flavor Flav and Solo. And then Blast versus Redman versus Dan G versus Eric Sermon at the Club 357. And 9 versus Redman versus Mac 10 versus Solo at the Stapleton Athletics. And Baby Chris versus Lauren versus Memphis Bleak versus Shaniqua at the Stereo. And House versus Baxter versus Warren G versus Nori at the Dragon House. And Ludacris versus Havoc versus Bo versus Lauren at the Limit. And Flavor Flav versus Manny versus Shauna versus Starks at the Pit. Got Crack versus Shaniqua versus Shauna versus Cruz at the Babylon. And Henry Rollins versus Manny versus Mac 10 versus Lauren at the Huntsville Scrapyard. And Joe Burton versus Lauren versus Jervis versus Ghostface Kelly at the Energy Power Plant. And then the last one is House versus Jacob versus Starks versus Joe Burton at the Terror Dome. Oh wow, that he gave me all these requests. He gave me those requests that he wants to make so easily. I know how that feels. Okay, let me know in the comments below and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Thanks for watching and enjoy.